Hi, this is Yvon Prehn from Effective Church Communications, and today I'd like to answer the question, in a world of websites, tweets, and Facebook pages, are printed bulletins still needed in the church? I do believe the answer is yes, and not only am I going to answer that in this presentation, but I'll also show you how to create effective bulletins. So let's get started. Now, here are some of the reasons why they're needed. Now, this is just an overview, and then I will be going into detail on each one of these. First of all, print bulletins are an essential part of multi-channel communications today. Second, I'll show you how they are essential for outreach. You really need them to grow your church, and I think I will have some rather interesting things that you probably haven't thought of here. Third, print bulletins are essential for pastoring. You really need them and can use them very effectively to grow your people. And fourth, in summary, printed bulletins are necessary because they are a great tool to help your church fully fulfill the Great Commission. So often bulletins are not the favorite thing that people want to do. They're seen as just a necessity, get them done, get them over with. But in reality, I hope you'll see by the end of this video how they can be used in very, very powerful ways to both bring people to come to know Jesus as Savior and to grow them as mature disciples. And that's what I mean by fully fulfilling the Great Commission. Let's first of all talk about how bulletins fit in with multi-channel communications today. We really live in a time of both and. We have print materials, we have our websites, and then the thing that is making stuff so challenging is we have all the different kinds of social media, Twitter and Facebook, and it seems like every week there's a new one that comes around. We really cannot choose either or. We can't say we're just going to do the website or we're just going to do a print piece. No, we really need to do all of them. Now, I emphasize this very strongly because our natural tendency is to want to focus on just one or two of them, typically on the things that we really like to do. But we can't do that because in this time of transition, different people are at different places. In your church, there will be people who love print. There will be people who only take in information online. And even though we might prefer a certain thing, we need to remember that we're servants and we need to serve all of our people. Our challenge in all of this really is to be all things to all people that we might win some. We must communicate in every channel possible, in both the new ways and in the traditional ways. And the little subtitle there where I say that it goes both ways, this is very important because sometimes people who are quite excited about new technology and just wanting to do things in social media, they don't perhaps want to do all of the print things that need to be done. And it's very easy for those of us who grew up loving to do print and enjoying print to say, well, you really need to do it in a printed format. I mean, that's the most important way. But at the same time, those of us that love print, we need to realize that if we're going to reach people, we need to learn to use the electronic tools. It's never, ever, ever appropriate for a person today in a church leadership position to say, well, I'm just not going to answer people's email. I don't feel that that's appropriate. You can't do that if you want to reach out to people. If you want to find out what's going on with your youth group, you'd better learn how to use Facebook. Those are just some of the things that we absolutely must do. In newer churches, if you want to keep some of the older people informed, you might need to create a large print bulletin. There's no one perfect way. While doing that, here's a few tips for sanity in managing all these different things. First of all, the number one solution is to put together a communications team. There is no way any one person can do it all. Some people absolutely love communicating through social media. Others are fantastic at making sure that all the birthdays are there and all the things are spelled correctly on the church bulletin. And if you can get a group of people who can help and encourage each other, that can be very, very useful. Now, the thing that you need to keep in mind, your strategy on this, is you have the same message. Make your message really clear, but just put it into all of the different channels. I have a free resource for you on the website on how to divide your people into two communication production levels for your communications team. Next, we're going to talk about how bulletins can be used for outreach and church growth. This is sometimes a surprising area to people, but when visitors come into your church, when people come to you, and we forget about this, we sometimes forget that the Holy Spirit is out there convicting the world of sin, righteousness, and judgment. People have pain, they have hurt, they have questions, they come to your church. For those people, clarity is absolutely essential. Nobody comes to church looking for great examples of graphic design. I can't tell you how many times people will say to me, oh, tell me how to make my bulletin look better. Well, you know, that really doesn't matter nearly as much. Now, I'm not saying do ugly bulletins, but that doesn't matter nearly as much as making sure that the information there is clear. They don't go home and say, oh, you know, it was the graphic design that drew me to Jesus. They just don't say that. So what do we need to do? We need to provide answers. And it's essential that we do that in the bulletin because your visitors may not have been on your website. Sometimes churches today, especially if they've spent a lot of time on their website, they assume that everybody that comes to the door has spent hours on the website and knows everything about the church. That just isn't true. Also, even if they have been on your website, if you're reaching out to totally unchurched people, many of them may not have grown up in church or they may not have attended a church that's similar to yours, and so they don't have any idea what's going on during the church service itself. They don't know who you are as a church. They don't know why you do what you do. They have no idea what the Christian faith is all about and what it even means to find salvation in Jesus. So here are the solutions. Number one, put in an order of service. Oh, gasp, oh, sigh, oh, no. A lot of people, that's not what they expect to hear. They don't want to do that. They don't think it's necessary, but it is. That is absolutely essential. Now, your order of service will vary tremendously based on your denomination, your location, your style. I'll give you some ideas in just a few minutes, and on the website there are many, many more examples. But the point is, even though these can vary tremendously, you need something that lets people know what's going on. Think of it this way. If you walk into a play, a concert, anything like that, you're handed a program. You know what's happening. If you walk into a church service, you're handed a piece of paper and you expect for that to be the program to let people know what is going on. Now, for Catholic churches, let me a little pause in parentheses here. For many Catholic churches, the bulletin is actually much more of a newsletter that people get when they leave the service. I understand that. That can be very valuable, and many Catholic bulletins are absolutely fantastic communication pieces for giving people all the information of what they need on what's going on in the parish during the week. However, having said that, I would really encourage you to think of something to give to people so they know what's going on during the service itself. Many people who have come back to the church when they have children or who are interested in a more liturgical style of worship, they're not familiar with the Mass. And so explain it to them, and I think you'll find a much greater retention of visitors. One of the things that's important to realize, too, when you put in an order of service is that the bulletin is not about you. I'm actually saying that because someone emailed me after reading some similar material to what I'm sharing with you now. And she said, it wasn't until we read your information that we realized the bulletin really isn't about us. It isn't about the people at our church. It's about the people that are coming who don't know anything about our church. And she said, when we realized what a fantastic outreach piece it could be, she said that changed the way we did everything, and especially in the order of service. Let me give you two examples of how this can work out in practice. Very, very different kinds of churches, but these are examples from real churches, and they made a tremendous difference in how visitors responded. The first one's from a contemporary, rather free-flowing church, and this is what they said on the front of their bulletin. Our worship service. Thanks for joining us today. We will begin with about 30 to 40 minutes of singing. Feel free to sit, stand, sing, dance, or just listen as we express our worship to God using all of our heart, mind, soul, and body. If you don't know the songs, hang on. We'll sing them a couple of times. And don't worry, we didn't know them either. The message, a time of practical teaching from the Bible. The offering. This is a time for church members to share with the church financially how God has blessed them. If you're a visitor, don't feel you have to contribute. The only gift we'd like from you is your connection card. Consider this service our gift to you. Prayer time. There will be people up front after the service to pray for any needs you may have. Please come up if interested. Refreshments. Join us for coffee, lemonade, and munchies in the lobby after the service. Now, isn't that absolutely wonderful? If you came from any tradition or no tradition at all, you know what's going on. You know what's going to happen. You know what's expected of you. Now, I realize this does not work and won't work for every church, but let me show you a different one. Now, this one is for a liturgical church. This is just part of one, so let me explain it. A lady came up to me and said, after she'd been at some of my seminars before, she said, we realized that we were using terms in the service that people didn't understand. So she said, down the left-hand side of our bulletin, and she showed it to me, it was a beautifully printed bulletin, they had explanations for the different parts of the service. Here's what they did. First of all, invocation means calling on, and here we call on the Lord's presence. In the confession, we name our sins silently before the Lord and accept responsibility for the harm they've caused in our relationships with God and each other. In the absolution, the Lord speaks through the office of pastor to apply the forgiveness Jesus won for us on the cross in a personal and public way. Introit means entrance in Latin. Now that we've been washed clean of our sins, the pastor enters into the altar area. The introit usually comes from a psalm. What was interesting, the lady said, as she talked about it, is that she was amazed not only at how positively visitors responded, but of how many members in the church came up to her later and said, you know, I didn't really remember why we were doing what we did. And something like that is typical, I think, in many, many churches where people really don't understand the preciousness of what they do. Let me share one last story on this that I think will help you realize how important clear explanations are. I read this in one of my seminars. This is a true story. And at the end of it, a gentleman came up to me and said, I just wanted you to know that I've been attending the Lutheran Church all my life. But he said, it wasn't until today when you read the meaning of the absolution that he said, I think I understood it for the very first time. And then he paused and he looked up at me and he said, you know, he said, I think I just got saved today. Isn't that great? In addition, your bulletin can explain who you are and what you do as a church. A bulletin can answer questions like these. Who are you as a denomination? What is your vision? What are your specific beliefs? What is your tradition? People are interested in those things. What else do you do? Now, details are absolutely essential here, though once again, you can have more information on the website. But do you have small groups during the week? Do you provide child care for them? Do you have a men's group, a women's group? Do you have a singles group? This is a very important one today. Do you do social service projects? Do you care for the poor? Who are you? What do you do? Put these things in your bulletin. Please make it clear that everyone's invited to attend. You might have something over your announcements that says something like, here's the wonderful things that are going on in our church this week. Please know that everyone is welcome to come, and if you want more information, just email or call the contact person that's listed. The most important question of all that we can answer in our bulletin is, who is Jesus? You can put it in brief in the bulletin, but then I would also encourage you to have additional resources online where you really encourage people to explore and dialogue with you. For visitors, you can have information like this in the bulletin. You can have some very basic websites. I really encourage you today to put in something like this. And then also be sure that you get information from them that you can follow up with. This is why having a connection card in your bulletin is extremely important. Now, we're not going to go into a lot of information on that. Many of you I know listening to this video will already have this book. If you don't, it's available on the Effective Church Communications website, and the print version, of course, available on Amazon. But it's absolutely essential that you do a good job creating, getting people to fill out, and responding to connection cards. Let me just show you a few examples now on how you can put a gospel presentation, more information about Jesus in your church bulletin. Here is a church that did a fairly lengthy explanation, and you notice they do have contact information if you have more questions. Here's another one. One of the things that I really like about this particular bulletin entry is not only does it give a brief summary of what it means to become a Christian, but it also shows you what is expected of you as you grow as a Christian. Now, before I leave, I want to say one other thing about this example right here. Some of you might think, oh, there's no way I could take up that much space in my little bulletin to put in what it means to be a Christian. Outside of the fact that this is kind of the most important thing that we do and the reason the whole church is there, but let me show you where this page came from. It came from a bulletin that is only one piece of paper. Here it is. Now, I have the whole example on the Effective Church Communications website, and for members, it's also available as a template. This is one of the close to what I would really call perfect bulletins. It is one tabloid size piece of paper. It's printed front and back side, but it's just one piece of paper and has absolutely everything you would need on it. Just an excellent, excellent example. Next, let's look at how printed bulletins can be used for both pastoring and discipleship growth. Some of the pastoring tasks that they can do, the primary thing that they will help you in this area is to grow believers into mature disciples. And they do this by giving you a place, first of all, just for sermon notes. You work very, very hard, those of you that are pastors, putting together your message, putting together your teaching, and sermon notes are a great way to both help people listen more effectively and then take home the material and review it. In addition to the notes themselves, I would greatly encourage you to add additional discipleship resources, verses, devotion, study topics, websites, books. Then, of course, your church also has many activities for spiritual growth, small groups, Bible studies, mission trips, service opportunities. Explain them fully and tell people about them again and again and again. Many studies today show that because of shifting work patterns, lots of people have to work on Sunday, so people aren't there every single Sunday. If you don't repeat invitations to perhaps small groups or Bible studies, a lot of your people simply won't see them, and they might be exactly the ones that are very interested in growing in their Christian life. Then, of course, for everything that you have in print, remembering that we're in a time of multi-channel communications, you also have that information on the web in another digital formats. One other area that you can put in are short testimonies and stories. I've seen many churches do just a great thing where instead of on the cover having a picture of the church, which I've always thought was the silliest thing on the planet to do because everybody knows what it looks like. They're sitting right there. You know, don't do that. Or one of these pre-printed fancy things, which are just such a silly waste of money. Why not start in by having the picture of someone from the church and a short story or testimony from them, perhaps how the Lord helped them in a difficult situation, perhaps goes along with the topic of the sermon, encourages people in their Christian walk. Yes, I know this is more work, but that might be a place where you get a reporter to be on your communications team. But this kind of thing just increases the pastoring, the discipleship growing ability of your church bulletin. Now, some objections and answers to what I've just talked about. This isn't exhaustive, but here are some of the key ones. First of all, our people don't like the changes. Nobody likes change, but at the same time, take this as an opportunity to teach your people about evangelism. We want to reach people who are not familiar with our church. We want people to feel comfortable and to know what's going on. Another one that I hear a lot is we're wasting too much paper. It just takes too much paper, and paper is really expensive. The church is not a paper conservation organization. It is created to save people, not paper. So I do understand paper is important, but people are more important. When people object to cost, it really, if it's used properly, the bulletin, because you can pack so much in it, it might seem like a couple pennies more if you add a few extra sheets. It is one of the most cost-effective investments that you can make. It can connect people with the church. It can inform them about growth opportunities. It can tell them about needs. It can do so much that you would have to spend much, much more money to do in other ways. So when you really look at what it can do, if you do it properly, it's really a great investment. And if you killed a few trees, well, in all honesty, they died for a good cause. And then there is always the challenge that people might read it during the service. And that's probably going to happen, but there are a few things that if this bothers you that you might think about. First of all, it's a challenge to the clarity of the publication. Sometimes people might appear to be reading the bulletin when they're simply trying to find their way in it. Now, there are some ways that through changing your typography, and I have another video that I'll have a link to that will show you how just maybe some small changes will help people follow your bulletin more easily. So that's one thing you might want to check out. Also a challenge to those of us who are speakers and teachers that we're doing the very best job that we can, that we're pointing out perhaps when we want people to look at the bulletin and then making it very clear when we're shifting and we would rather that they would be looking at the screen or following the teaching more closely. And finally, trust your audience. Some of the younger generation will say to you, well, I can multitask. I'm listening to every word that you're saying, but I'm also looking up some things either in the bulletin or sometimes people will be looking up other resources on their iPhones. And even though that's very, very hard for us, we need to trust our people, respect them, and also to trust the Lord that they will get the information that they need. So finally, just in review, print bulletins are essential for multi-channel communications. Yes, you need all the current and wonderful social media and web-based communication formats, but nothing beats print if you want to reach out, grow your church, because it helps visitors know exactly what's going on and where to find out more information. It's fantastic for pastoring. You can grow your people by putting them in touch with additional ways to grow, sermon notes, resources. In summary, a printed bulletin is fantastic because it's a great tool to help your church fully fulfill the Great Commission. May the Lord bless you and give you joy and strength as you serve Him today in church communications.